The American flag. It is the symbol of hope and inspiration that is the very essence of everyone and everything in the United States of America. In my judgment, there is no story that better epitomizes that feeling than the story of Mike Christian. I'd like us all to look back 60-odd years and go to a small town outside of Selma, Alabama, wherein an American is born. This American's name is Mike Christian. He was born to a humble origin in that small town, rural, somewhat unknown to the likes of what we're used to. And what they lacked in material wealth, they made up for in the values that they learned, being patriotic, humble, and learning about the American dream. Mike had a very good life because he had loving parents, but he also lived a very poor life as a child, and he wasn't able to afford a pair of shoes until the age of 13. This, however, taught Mike about the idea of the American dream, in that it's not about making it rich, but instead that the American dream is about making it. It's about making a life for yourself. And knowing this truth, Mike put himself on a path that would lead him to one day become a U.S. Naval flying officer. He earned that title at the age of 17, and quickly climbing the ranks in the Navy, he was put on a flying squadron. Come 1971, the U.S. is locked in a bloody war with Vietnam. Casualties are high, and the North Vietnamese forces control many territories all throughout the small peninsula. Mike's squadron was tasked with a dangerous mission to run bombers and air fighters to protect those bombers over enemy garrisons and take out anti-aircraft. Now, the men on this squadron, Mike included, knew the dangers that lie ahead in this mission. However, the bravery and their passion for service kept them strong in their fight. As they took off and flew over these enemy garrisons, they were soon barraged with anti-air gun bullets. These men, brave as they would be, knew a fear unbeknownst to any of us as they watched as their plane wings had bullets ripping through them. And as their tools that they would use, their aircrafts, became tools for instilling freedom in the world, they soon transformed into flying coffins that would carry them slowly towards the ground below. This kind of fear could sink the heart of any man. But for Mike, in his plane, learning what he did, learning what he knew that there were two unstoppable forces at his back. One force came from above. It was the watchful eye and tender hand of Almighty God, and he knew that it wouldn't let him fall and sink into the ground below. Another force came from below, but from seas beyond. It was a force of the people that would have his back and be at his beck and call, and a fighting force that would do everything in their power to secure his safety. Now, Mike's fears lifted alongside him and his parachute, and as he glided down onto unfamiliar soil, the barrels of the Viet Cong troops' guns pointed at him. Mike knew he had no reason to fear. The Viet Cong quickly seized him as he touched down, along with his other crew members. They stripped them of their gear, bagged their heads, and bound their hands. And dragging them off to their nearby camp, they waited for a supply convoy to roll by and take them to a prison unlike any other. It was known as the Hanoi Hilton. Now, this is a misnomer for what we know familiarly as a hotel. A Hilton has basic luxuries that we all are familiar with. It was named so because it was the exact opposite of these basic luxuries we have come to know. There was no room service. Instead, there were cold, damp rooms made of stone, concrete, reinforced with steel, and had chalky limestone blocks in the cracks that surrounded them. There was no food service either. Instead, there was small rations of rotten food that the Viet Cong would refuse to eat. That was what was given to the prisoners, along with cold, swampy water that was either routinely given in small rations or used to douse them when they were cold at night. Now Mike and his crew were moved into a small cell, just like any other in the Hanoi Hilton. And looking around them, they noticed the limited resources and lack of any basic pleasantries. Mike, however, seeing that his crew was down in morale and that they had lost their sense of pride and safety and freedom, had to find the light in the darkness that would help them to overcome. Noticing how desolate these rooms were, Mike couldn't help but find the small things that would help him get through this, such as a barred window with bamboo growing outside of it, this Hanoi Hilton being in the jungle. Mike would take some small bamboo, crushing it in his hand, and carrying it with him, knowing it could help him along the way in his small prison. Amongst the other things that the prisoners were rationed was a set of what they called Vietnamese pajamas. They were a blue long-sleeve shirt and blue long pants. They were cotton and had one tine drawstring at the waist. Amongst other things, the men were also given white rags in which they had to clean Vietnamese equipment and that they would steal and keep with them to wrap around their wounds and their bloodied arms from bayonet strikes. Now Mike saw these colors that were familiar to him here in his prison. He took the inside of his blue shirt, folding it out so that he had the inside out, and taking his crushed bamboo and the drawstring thread, fashioned himself a small needle, and using another sharp piece of bamboo, he would take those bloody rags and cut them along these strips. He would take the red parts and cut them all in one red line, the white parts and cut them in one line. And he made 13 in total, 7 red, 6 white. And on the inside of his shirt, he'd take that bamboo needle and thread and start to weave and sew in these 13 stripes, leaving a square just big enough to become a Union Jack. And finally, with those limestone bricks that lay in his cell around him, he would poke in just enough white on that Union Jack to make it become recognizable as an American flag. Now the other prisoners, seeing his act of patriotism, reveled and joined him in it, and it became the routine practice of those prisoners that every morning at dawn they would stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and then every evening at dusk they would stand again and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Mike Christian still holding the inside out of his blue shirt with the American flag laying on. Now what this did for the prisoners was more than just provide a ritual. What this did was to reinsure hope and stability in their lives. These men had the basic American ideals stripped from them. They were devoid of freedom, they were devoid of their basic civil liberties, and they were devoid of the American dream. Saying the Pledge of Allegiance for those men gave them the hope and pride they needed to understand that they could escape, they could get out, they could live on, and they could pursue that dream. They could find their freedom, even in that darkness. Now, days into this practice, the Viet Cong guards around the cells noticed the distinct murmurs and chatters of this pledge that would happen at certain times throughout the day. And following that voice back to their cell, they caught them one day, mid-pledge, and before they could finish, the Viet Cong, blood boiling in them at the audacity that these troops had to honor their country and have some sense of hope in their prison. They couldn't let them finish their pledge. And before they were done, Mike's head, the back of it, was quickly met with a blunt blow from a rifle. And the other men, getting whipped with bamboo, were then doused with more cold water and stripped of their clothes as well. Mike, now being beaten on the back with batons, fell to the ground so hard, having his limbs bashed in so as he couldn't escape. And then dragging him by the hands and legs out of the cell, the Viet Cong took him to an isolated room, where they proceeded to stab him on the limbs, bash in his skull, and continually beat him, making sure to kick him over as not to miss any part of his body left unbroken. Mike's eyes were punched in swollen, his teeth were lost, and just any recognizable feature of that soldier was gone because of his act of patriotism. Now they left Mike, bloodied and broken and beaten, in that lone cell, hearing only the screams of the other soldiers and the slam shut of the iron doors around him. Mike lay there unconscious until, when he miraculously came to, he realized that this act was not to be taken lightly, and that those Viet Cong made many mistakes in their lives, but of those mistakes, their biggest was leaving Mike Christian alive. Because they could beat the hell out of that man, but they could never beat the American out of him. Because the very first thing he did when he woke up, when he came to, eyes still swollen shut, teeth lost, bleeding from the limbs, was he took those leftover rags he held onto. He took that spare piece of bamboo he kept in his pocket, the little clothing he had left of his pants, and tearing that pants line down at the bottom of the cuff, he took those rags, began sewing another American flag, and then pressing in more stars, and then holding on to it, clutching it, until other soldiers were eventually moved into his cell. He was finally ready to share with them this hope. Mike Christian was a hero, not because he was beaten and broken and bloodied and beat to the ground. Not because he was broken, but because the enemy could not break him. Because he couldn't be beaten in the two places that we hold when we say the Pledge of Allegiance. He could not be broken here, and he could not be broken up here. Mike Christian could not be defeated in the heart that beat with passion for the American dream, for the American spirit, or in the head that was able to intuitively find a way to exert that passion and to act on that patriotism. Now eventually, Mike Christian and the other prisoners of war were finally released when a ceasefire was called. They got to go home to American soil. And that little boy who couldn't afford shoes until the age of 13 was able to walk home in American combat boots. This act can teach us all something about our duty to our country and about the significance of the Pledge of Allegiance. And that is that performing an act such as Mike's is something any of us can do in our own right. We just have to put ourselves in a position where we're able to bring to light the ability to be patriotic, the ability to have reverence for our flag, and the ability to say the Pledge of Allegiance with conviction and honor. It is my hope that after hearing this story, you are better able to appreciate the following ceremony, and I thank you all graciously for hearing this story. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Gabe, for a truly amazing story. At this point, we're going to retire an American flag. To make that happen, Brian is going to lead the call to retire an American flag. Camp, attention! Please remove all non-uniform hats. Under guard! Advance! Under guard! Prepare to present the colors!
Camp, salute! Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor guard! Prepare to retire the colors! Honor guard! Retire the colors! Honor guard! Regroup! Honor guard! About face! Honor guard! Salute! Two.
An American flag has just been retired. Another will soon take its place. There will always be an American flag. Brian will now make the call of presentation of an American flag. Honor guard! Advance!
present the colors. Honor guard! Present the colors. Camp salute. Please remain saluting for the national anthem. Two.
That concludes our patriotic campfire. Please return to your campsites by the trail on your left. Please return in silence and with respect. Thank you.